Welcome to this Aztlander presentation, Maya Deep Time Breakthroughs at Quirigua, Yaxchilan, Palenque, and Coba, with independent researcher Carl Callaway. Take it away, Carl.
All right, Jim, I just want to thank you and Michael for providing this Aztlander forum to probe deeply into all things Mesoamerica and the opportunity to take a really deep dive into various topics. And I think the Aztlander talks are like an archaeological deep dig where we all get to discover together the rich history, art, and philosophy of the Americas. And I really, really appreciate this special type of forum. My talk today is about Maya deep time. And I'm sort of going out on a mathematical limb here of sorts. The solutions that I'm going to provide are mathematically correct. But the question remains if the Maya scribe actually employed these equations. So again, they're mathematically correct, but there's a little bit of interpretation whether they applied these types of equations. I think that they did. This being the case, that no mathematically viable solutions have ever been offered for the Quirigua deep time inscriptions in the last 150 years since they were discovered. I humbly submit my work as an initial inquiry to be critiqued and tested. These are deep time solutions basically to throw rocks at, okay, and to critique. And it's very much a work in progress. So with that in mind, let's begin. So math class is officially in session. This is a beautiful rollout of one of Justin's vases. And we have the god Itzamna with his beautiful stylus and a codex. And he is teaching his students to count and the mathematical formula. Now, I'm serious about this. I have a bit of a health hazard warning here. If you have any phobia, arithmophobia, numerophobia, octophobia, that's the fear of the number 8. If you have the fear of the number 13, especially, and if you have the fear of monstrous words, this is not the presentation for you. And if you start to experience worry and panic and tense muscles, increased heart rate, sweaty palms, lightheadedness, brain fog during the presentation, stop, just turn off the screen immediately and seek proper medical treatment. Safety first, always. And I'm deadly serious about this because I'm going to have to go into deep math here, which might cause people to say, oh my God, I'm in ninth grade algebra class again, right? But in order to understand the deep time calculations, we're going to have to actually do these calculations by hand, the way that the Maya did them. Okay, but before that, on a lighter note, I just want to say Happy Era Day, everybody, because today is the inaugural date of the Maya long count. I mean, when I was given the August 11th date, I said, oh, that's actually perfect because way back on August 11th, 3114 BC was the so-called Maya creation date. It is also the 0 date of the Maya long count. So we're going to be talking all about the long count and deep time long counts. So I couldn't ask for a more proper day to give this lecture. If you want to get into the events of Era Day, this is something I know a little bit about because I did an entire PhD thesis on all of the events of Era Day. And there's over 15 events that happen on this very special day. I have some examples of just some of those events. And there's over 50 inscriptions that talk about events and astronomical occurrences and things like that that happen on this all-important day of days, on the day of the first sun of the new Maya era. I also want to just take a quick moment here and dedicate this talk to three really important people. One, when I was taking care of my dear friend Susie McCoy, palliative care, and it was a really rough road over 6 months. As she lay there in bed dying, I would take care of her, and I had a lot of downtime, so I was doing Maya inscriptions during that time, and then checking in on her. And I remember one time she turned to me and she said, "Carl, you live in an alternate universe." But anyways, she was very, very interested in the work I was doing, and she was my secret sharer about discoveries. The other person is dear to us all is Graham Atkinson, wonderful mathematician, who wrote me a deep time a long count calculator on Excel so that I could check these massive calculations and recheck all the tables that I had calculated out by hand. I could not have the confidence that I have now without Graham's deep time calculator. And a few months after he created this calculator, he passed away. Incredibly lucid all the way up to the end. And of course, many of you knew Yanis Endrikis from the Texas Maya meetings. I believe Yanis was Latvian. He was a true rocket scientist. I believe he worked for Boeing, if memory serves me correct. And he had access to the NASA computers that he was using to literally number crunch these deep time counts, because normal calculators at that time didn't have enough screen to be able to calculate, the significant digits in the integers. So Yanis and I had many a conversation year after year over these deep time inscriptions. We got absolutely nowhere, but we were asking the right questions. That's the important thing. We failed at every turn, but we were asking the right questions. So here are the suspects that we have at Quirigua. We have Stela F, Stela D, Stela A, and Stela E. And what is so maddening about these time periods, these higher periods, is that even when we know the value, such as on Stela F, we know that this is 19 oblatoons. We know that this is 13 quintiltoons. All right, we know the value. We plug in the values, they don't work, right? And it gets even worse when you're talking about periods on Stela A and Stela E, where we don't know, we can't name them, and we don't know the values. And they too seemingly are nonsensical, right? They don't seem to connect to any given base date or any date on the stela whatsoever. So something is amiss. And the one thing that we did know, we know that they are counting gargantuan periods of time. All right, that's the only thing we did know. Now, before we go deep into deep time, I know a lot of you know this, but a lot of you may not know sort of the basics of Maya calendar mechanics. And I just want to look at a typical date. This is actually a modern inscription on a building in San Diego, written by Mark Van Stone. They were dedicating the building, and he painted out a Maya inscription for the building's inauguration there at his college. So what we have here is Maya dates are highly formulaic, and they're highly structured. Okay, and often they'll start with initial long count. And that's what I have here in yellow. And I'm color coding the different calendar cycles. And I hope to keep this consistent through the presentation, so you can kind of spot the color and you can know the cycle. So in sort of gold here, what we have is a long count. And the Maya counted the number of days from a starting point. This is akin to their count of centuries. I mean, to our count of centuries, right? So we count the number of years from a starting point. That is year one, not year zero, but that is year one of the birth of Christ. The Romans didn't have an early Gregorian. They didn't have zero yet. It hadn't been invented. So they went from Julian to Gregorian. Uh, the last day, the last year of one, and the beginning year of the next. So we count the number of years from a starting point, which is related to the birth and the life of Christ. When we say today is August 11th, 2025, that 2025 is a count of centuries from a starting point, the number of years. Well, here the Maya are not going to count the number of years. They're going to count the number of days from the starting point. So this is a calculation that goes into the millions, of days. Literally, the sun. In its most basic form, the long count is a count of suns. One sun, two sun, three sun, four sun. Okay, and then you count that many days from a starting point, and then you will land on the day name. Now, the day name is composed of two different calendars. We do exactly the same thing. Today is Monday, August 11th. August 11th is a calendar of 365 days, and it basically intermeshes with a count of 7 days of the week, named after 7 Roman gods. So to name a day, we use two calendars. We use a calendar of 7 days, and we also use a calendar of 365 days. Well, the Maya are going to name a day using two calendars. One is going to be from the 260-day calendar, and the other one's from the 365-day calendar. These two calendars are going to intermesh and create a larger cycle of time, which we call a calendar round of 18,980 days. Okay. And then after that, we have the Maya languages are verb initial. So we have the verb after the date, and then we have objects, people, places that follow. Okay. Now, again, I need to, on the day name itself, we have the 260-day sulking ritual calendar. This is a calendar of divination, all right? In fact, if you've read my previous article on time and ancestry of the ancient Maya, on the Aztlander, we know from David Stewart's research and others that this day sign cartouche is a blood sign. Outside of naming the day, inside the cartouche, it's the sign for flowing blood, specifically sacrificial blood. Okay, so the flow of time is being equated to the flow of sacrificial blood. And this intimate connection is still in practice today in Highland Guatemala. Women will sync their menses cycle to the lunar cycle. Okay, this is a very, very intimate connection. And then we have the 365-day solar ob year. Now, I also want you to keep in mind that divination is counting. So when we're counting through the Maya calendar, we are actually performing an act of divination because the numbers were deities. We don't get up and pray to the number 8, but the Maya did. The number 10 was the death god. The number 3 was the god of song, poetry, of breath and poetry. Okay, the number 12 is the celestial god of flowering maize. And so the Maya had this extremely intimate connection with these numbers because the numbers were attributed to natural cycles within their environment. So when you're divining, when you're counting, you're performing an act of divination in which you are having a conversation with these natural forces. Okay? Let me see here. So basically, if we look at, if we chart all this on a timeline, right? What we see here, let me minimize here. What we see here, we put all this on a timeline, Mark's inscription here. And again, we have a count of days. We count from historical time, 5 Ahau 13 Posh on the right. We count back that number of days, which is 1,868,400 days. And we will reach a starting point, which is the starting point of the Maya long count and the famous 4 Ahau 8 Kum Ku. And this is the birth of the Maya era, and it is also for them the birth of the universe. And that corresponds to August 11th, 3114 BC. Okay, steady yourself, steady yourself. What we're going to have to do here is I'm going to show you if when we're given a long count, how we actually mathematically calculate the position of the resulting day. Okay, so I chose a long count here that was really quite easy. The end of the 10th Bak'tun that we have here on Coba and Stela J north. Okay, so you have the 10th Bak'tun. What are the steps on getting from 4 Ahau 8 Kum Ku, the base state, in deep time to 7 Ahau 18 Seep historical time? Okay, so step one, we're going to take that long count of 10,0,0,0,0. Okay, we're going to take that long count of days and we're going to convert that into Arabic notation with Arabic numbers. They should be called Indian numbers, but that's another story. But to Arabic notation that we're very familiar with. So 10 Bak'tuns of a long count is actually 440,000 days. So now to find the position of that in time, what we're going to do is we're going to take the 260-day calendar and we're going to use that as a divisor. 260 is a divisor. We're going to divide it into that 1,444,000 days. And what we're interested in is the resulting quotient remainder. Because again, we're not interested in the full cycles of 260, because if I count 260 days from 4 Ahau to 260 days, I'm going to reach 4 Ahau. What we want is that fractional remainder. That's going to tell us the step in the sulking. And if we divide that also by 365, if we divide the long count by 365, we're going to get that fractional remainder, which is going to tell us the position in the second calendar of the Ab, or the 365-day calendar. So that's what we do. We sum up the number of days, we divide it by 260. We find that we have a fractional remainder of 120 days. And so if you count 4 Ahau forward 120 days, you'll reach 7 Ahau. Same thing with the Ab calendar. We divide our long count by 365. We get a fractional remainder of 75 days. We count forward 75 days from 8 Kum Ku, and we hit 18 Seep. So that is mathematically how it's done. Now, that's how mathematically we do it. This isn't how mathematically the Maya would do it, as Shamina has shown me quite wonderfully. But that's another discussion. The Maya had much faster ways and were much more proficient in this and knew all the shortcuts, okay? So, but this is how we do it and to acquire the same result. And it's familiar to us. Now, when you're dealing with deep time, you've got to be, there is no Maya calculator program that can actually calculate these deep time dates. So you have to do them by hand. My only advantage here is I learned how to do Maya calendrics by hand at 14 years old. And so I didn't have a calculator. So I had to do it by hand, as the Maya did it by hand. So there is no Maya calculator program, and we'll discuss why, that can count up as high as we're going to count up to calculate target dates and base dates. The normal calculators cannot handle all these digits, especially the significant digits that will give you that quotient fractional remainder. So, you're lost on the screen. Your screen is limited to like maybe 20 integers, right? We're going much bigger than that. So here is, these are two tables from Avini. These are tables that are made by Teeple, and great mathematician and archaeoastronomer from the 20s and 30s. And again, if you count 120 days from 4 How forward, you will hit 7 How. And so you need to negotiate through these tables to find that fractional remainder and the day position. Okay, and we may refer to these at a later date. Okay, so what we're able to do here is this is a nice page from Dave Stewart's Order of Days. Dave did something really wonderful in this book. It is the only discussion, this is his 2012 book, it is the only discussion on deep time that kind of consolidates all the knowledge that we knew up to that point. And I'm going to share a little bit of Dave's ideas and then capitalize on those ideas. So basically what we can do with these long counts, we can list them out in chronologically order, and we can create a chronology and attribute a Maya history and also mythic dates. For the Maya, myth was history. I believe that they really didn't see a distinction between history and myth, right? The days their patron gods were born and things of this nature. So now we have a calendar that we can translate into the Roman Arabic numerals and Roman alphabet, and we're off and running. Okay. And we have real history. So how high is high? How high could the Maya actually count up? Well, I have an appendix. I was so fascinated by this question. I have an appendix on my PhD thesis that is just naming the higher periods and evidence for all the other higher periods, because they kept popping up in conjunction with era day inscriptions. So what I've done here, this is a table from my thesis. Because we don't know the names, really know the names beyond the Bak'tun of the names of the Maya higher periods, it's much better to refer them as orders. We have to have a kind of a new nomenclature here. So the first order is Keen, the second order is Winik, the third order is Tun, Katun, the fifth order is Bak'tun, sixth order is Bak'tun, seventh order is Kalabtun, eighth order is Kinchaltun. By the way, from the names from Bak'tun on up that are given, these are neologisms. These are just names that Morley and Thompson made up from Beltran's dictionary. Okay, these aren't the actual assigned names that the Maya Maya scribes gave them. So that's only to the eighth order, and you can see how this rises in magnitude. It's a vestigial count and 20 base count, and it rises in magnitude very quickly. So how high can they count? If we look at Coba Stela 1, has a wonderful count that actually goes up to the 24th order. Okay, and this is very impressive. There's 3 stela. I think it's 28 stela, 28, 5, it's 28 or 24, 5, and Coba Stela 1 have these grand long counts. The pictures that I'm showing you are from Thompson's expedition in the late 20s to Coba. They called it Makan Shok back then. And they heard about this, ruined city in the jungle. They were working at Chichen, and Thompson and friends, Charlot and Palenque and others, they went and they discovered, rediscovered Coba, and they found these stelas with these awesome magnitudes. This is their pictures from that late 20s expedition, and it kills me because you can see that there's quite a lot of detail on the monument if you just step 5 feet closer. Okay, this is their photo, and the only close-up photo that they took, I know this looks like spaghetti to a lot of you, but there's a lot of detail here that we can glean. This is the only photo that they took of the higher periods. They were only interested in the ones that they could name. We don't have any photos of close-up photos of the higher periods, which is maddening. I was recently in Chicago. I knocked many, many times on the door of the Field Museum in Chicago where Thompson worked. I wanted to go in and look at the paperwork and the photos he left behind, hoping that these photos were there. Never answered my call after 7 or 8 inquiries. So for any of you that have connections to the Field Museum, I would really like to talk to their archivist and schedule a session to look at the paperwork that Thompson left behind. He may have left some of these photos behind as well. Okay, here we go up to the 24th order. So you can see here that our numbers are getting really, really large really, really quickly. Now, how does that 24th order convert to Arabic notation? Well, here we have it. We have at the very top, we have a line of a chain, a cumulative, I call this a cumulative chain of 13s. Now, early on, people were saying, oh, well, the 13 is just symbolic. It doesn't hold any value. Okay, it's just a symbolic 0. That argument was there all the way up into the early 90s. One reason why that argument was there is because no one wanted to do the math. Okay, it's just too big of a number to even conceive of. Because if these 13s actually hold value, then you're talking about a number that encompasses over 10 nonillion days. Okay, how big is 10 nonillion days? Okay, so let me just show you how you convert this long count. And take note that the higher orders begin at the Bak'tun. They don't begin at the Qatun, tune, or the Wina, or the Keen. They always begin at the Bak'tun on higher. If you convert that decimal notation, and you add up all of those periods with their 13 coefficient, here's each one added up, you get to over 10 nonillion years and change. Okay, how many of that? How many years is that in vague years? Well, it's over 28 octillion years. So it's 28 octillion, 304 septillion, 747 sextillion, 974 quintillion, 44 quadrillion, 700 trillion, 793 billion, 78 million, 586,608 vague years or ob years. Okay, pretty impressive. Okay, for someone to conceive of a span of time of 28 octillion years. In comparison, just so that you know, because we're not used to dealing with numbers this big, the current age of our universe is 3.7 billion years old. That's 3.7 followed by 8 tiny zeros. Actually, no, by 7 tiny zeros. 7 tiny zeros. Okay. Look how many zeros you have here. Okay, I mean, it's just inconceivably large. Well, what David did in his Order of Days book, and I really applaud him for doing this, he thought that past his prologue, that these past orders and higher periods to 24, that they would also count up to 24 periods into deep future. So he actually added up the days, the total sum of days, that if you counted back 24 orders into the past and 24 orders into the future, what's that? What's that full number, right? Right? So it's 26 nonillion days. Oh, and change. Okay. Now, David also made a very important distinction, and this is going to be very critical for us to understand deep time, that when you cross over the era date, which is 0 date of the Maya long count, when you cross over, okay, and you want to name that long count in a day in deep time, the higher periods count up to 13. This is what we know from the mathematics at Palenque and elsewhere. So in the previous era, the higher periods, Bak'tun and above, capped out at 13. The odometer capped out at 13. But if you count forward in the new Maya millennium, toward and then toward the Bak'tuns and the Peaktuns and the Kalabtuns, the higher periods cap out at 19, or we call this base 20. In the deep past before the era date, they cap out at 13. If you go from era day into the future, they cap out at base 20 with a notation of 19. This is really, really important to understand this notation, because if you don't understand the notation, you can't navigate through deep time. Okay. Now, what era day is about, all those events of era day, it's about this reboot monument, and Barb had a really good conceptualization of this. She said, era day is all about a new datum point. And part of that new datum point, mathematically speaking, is that you are changing this notation from 13, base 13 to base 20. It's very, very important, okay, to understand. And mathematically, that's what the changing out of the altars is all about. The changing out of the pedestal altars is all about. It's like a convocation. They get all together and say, we're changing notation now from base 13 to base 20. I really like David's conception here of deep past and deep future, because this is a span of 48 orders in total, and it's perfectly divisible by 33 Bak'tuns. And the reason that's important is because the Maya were also employing a larger almanac of 33 Bak'tuns, which I hope at some future date Barb will be able to present upon. This is the so-called 311 peak calendar of 33 Bak'tuns. So you have a larger span of time, even contextualizing the large long count counts. But the question still remains, does this timeline that David proposes, is this the full capacity of Maya time? Could Maya scribes have counted beyond 24 or 48 orders if they so choose? My opinion is the Maya can count as high as they want. They are not limited to this scheme, okay, at this count. If they wanted to count higher, they could. Okay, other places where we see these grand long counts with higher periods with repeating coefficients is on the beautiful example on Yaxchilan hieroglyphic stairway 2, step 7. We have a beautiful long count here in conjunction with a ball game that's being played. I'm showing here the right side of the step. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see here in Arabic notation this long count. And I've highlighted the sort of the cumulative count of 13s, and it's connected to a normal a long count. And what's really neat about this is more sophisticated mathematics than when we saw at Coba. At Coba, we didn't our long count was 0. Okay, it was 0 count of days counting back this cumulative chain of 13s to the 24th order. This one is a little more sophisticated because the Bak'tuns are 9, right? And then the Peaktuns are 13 and whatnot. And again, people looked at this and said, "Oh, these 13s, they're symbolic and they don't hold any real value." Well, I'm sorry, you were just too lazy to actually do the math. And we're going to look at Yaxchilan in a little bit more expanded form. But what I want to point out here, something really neat, is that Bird Jaguar 4, I believe, Bird Jaguar, he is playing this ball game, and he is dressed in the headdress of a water lily god. And what makes that's so important is that our 13th order is like in kind to a water lily god. We have the number 1 next to a water lily serpent, and we know this god from other inscriptions. He's like a custodian of deep time, and we refer to him as Hunweets. And he is a riverine water lily god who is associated with deep time counting. What makes that so neat is not only bird jaguar dressed in his headdress, part of the headdress is this fish coming out of a water lily pad, but if you go over to the inscription here says that bird jaguar is in the guise. I think it's Yaxchit Hun Wheats Nakan, right? So Hun Wheats is the god being impersonated by bird jaguar. At the same time, we have the god. This is John Montgomery's drawing, and he draws the one there, the Hun, the one for the Hun Wheats. This is Hun Wheats Hob. So we get this nice reflection of the god being imitated and being evoked, and the name of the highest period. Now, this gets us to something really, really interesting that Herbert Spenden of Maya art and iconography fame, noticed way back in the 1920s. And what he said here is he said, when it comes to the higher periods, Bak'tun, Pektun, Kalabtun, he said, these rising levels of magnitude were no doubt part of a general cosmic conception involving universal relations in time and space and provinces of divinity. He was absolutely right, because when he was drawing Maya inscriptions, he noticed, such as with sky bands here, this is the sky band on the inner north door of, let me go back, of the Palenque House E. He noticed that the outstretched wings and the masks of the bird here was the Bak'tun bird, the so-called Chan bird. This is why the Bak'tun is called the Chan bird, because he's also the god of the sky bands. So again, Spenden is noting, he's seeing you have these rising levels of magnitude, right? Levels of earth, underworld, earth, and sky, right? And in each of these various levels they occupy a place and a god. And that's what we're seeing here at Yaxchilan. We're seeing that a higher period is named after an actual god. Again, gods of time, and most likely this is where a place that Hun Wheats kind of hung out in the 13th order. But so when we look at higher periods, we have to understand that they are both also simultaneously gods and provinces of divinity, which exactly what Spenden had said. Now, also, we have all these wonderful, how do you say this, phrases or metaphors for counting, especially in the Dresden Codex. And I was discussing this with Barbara McLeod one day, and because to add meant kin tiha, so the day or the sun enters into the water, and then subtraction was kin lok, right? It comes out, right? So Barb kind of conceived, when you look at the verticality of a stela, where you have the lower orders on the bottom, and when you add, starting with the first day, you start at the bottom of the long count, and as you cumulatively add more days, you bump up through the various periods and orders, correct? So there is this metaphor for counting, or this conception that the day enters in at the base of the stela, and then when you subtract out of the top, they go back down. Okay, and so this is a wonderful conceptualization of that Barb gave me, and I think she's onto something, because again, you have this vertical hierarchy that Spenden was talking about. People don't perceive Maya monuments in this way, but in the lower orders, you have deer and monkeys and reptiles, and then you've got rivers, and then you've got vultures, and you've got avian birds. You see, the higher you go. So is there a sort of hierarchy of scale within Maya counting that is related to these various conceptual layers of underworld, earth, and sky? Something to think about. Just keep in mind there. Okay, let's jump to Stela F and look at our problem here. And let's see. Let's look at our problem here. So here's Stela F and the suspects. We have Stela F East. We have an initial long count that is 9, 16, 10, 1 how 3 seep. And of course, I have the 260 in red, the 365-day calendar in green. This is our base date for the initial long count. And after mentioning, raising of stela and rituals and things of this nature, we come to our first big jump in time, okay, of 19 oblotuns. We also have a title given to Cocktailu, the king who is erecting this monument, and he is given the title of the 311 Peak Lord. This is that 33 Bak'tun cycle, which Barb probed and conceived the almanac of. All right, and so he's given this title of the 311 Peak Lord, and then we have this glyph in purple is really a mystery. We'll talk about that, but we have our first big jump back into deep time. It could be back or forward, and we come to the date 1 how 13 mole. Well, we know what this day is. We know what this time period is. It's 19 oblotuns. And if you take 19 oblotuns and you count forward or backward from our base date, you do not hit 1 how 13 mole. Something is amiss. Something is wrong here, okay? So they talk about the events that happened on that day, which we'll talk about shortly. Then we come to the next date. They're either counting backward or forward in time, 13 Kanichel tunes. Okay, so we know this value because it's used on other monuments from other sites. If you count forward or back from the base date, if you count forward or back from the previous date, you do not hit the target date 1 how 13 Yaxchilan. Something is amiss. Something is horribly, horribly wrong. So what I did is I sort of focused in on this glyph in purple here. This expression we have is literally saying 0 alautun, and the second one is saying 0 peaktun. This is a type of mathematical notation that I still can't really pin down and define fully. But what it is, it's unique. We don't see it anywhere else in the Maya corpus, but it's a focus marker. It's coming before the big jumps into deep time, and it's telling us to focus on that 19 oblotun and look at it in a different way. So what I did is I just said, well, what if it meant 0 2 alautun, 0 2 peaktun? And the only equivalent inscription that we possibly have that's kind of using a similar terminology is on page 61 of the Dresden Codex. And here, right before the era date, Forahau Ekumku, we have a count from 19 to 0. Okay, so and it says basically it was made he of 20, a count of 19 to 0 Forahau Ekumku. So before Forahau Ekumku, we have a count of very Maya count from 19 to 0, which 19 to 0 is 20 days. And up here we say we begin with it was made the Winik. It was made he of 20. Barb was also critical. I went to her, gosh, this was like over 25 years ago or something like that. I said, Barb, what is Ahmi Keen? What is Ahmi Keen? I mean, it literally says, he no day, he no day. And she says, well, a day without a name is 0. And then that's when the lightning struck. It was like a bolt of lightning. Of course, it's 19 to 0. Ahmi Keen is another way to signify 0. A day without a name is 0. Thank you, Barb. So again, what I want to point out, and this is a count of 20 days that happens prior to the era day, and this is the antecedent to what is spelled out in the book of the Chilam Balam of Chumayel about the count of 20 days. There's a before the era date, before 4 how, there's a count of 20 days of creation, and this proves to you that that 20 days of creation is a Maya. This is not something that they're trying to adapt from from a biblical 7 days of creation, as some people have thought. Here's the proof. Okay, a 20-day count prior to 4 how, and they say the number 20 is being created. It's more than just a number. This is because the Ahwanik also means human. It also means human consciousness. This is the vestigial count of 20 that's being created prior to the creation of the world. And I really encourage you to go into the Chilam Balama Chumao and read this incredibly elaborate song. It's called the Song of the Winao, about how the song, how the Winao is born into the cosmos prior to the earth being made, has to take his first steps across the sky, and he lays out this trajectory of 40 days, 20 and 20 days equaling 40, that then the stars and the moon will follow and be counted by. Just beautiful, just beautiful. Okay, so let's get back to Stela F. So we know that the base date is useless, the initial base date on the east side. If we go to the west side, we're given quite a lot of other period endings, and one of them hits the mark beautifully. It's 9/15/10, 3 how 13 mole. And then they have a Copan reference, like they're saying, "What are we getting this from Copan?" Or that's really quite odd. But anyways, 9/15/10, 3 how 3 mole is a really viable base date. Now, what I conceived of, what this focus marker here, these in purple, is what this was, is I said it could possibly be talking about a cumulative chain of not a single Ablatun, but a cumulative chain of Ablatun, similar to what we saw at Yaxchilan and Coba, starting at the Bak'tun, rising in magnitude ever higher and ever higher. So quite possibly this focus marker is acting sort of like summation. Maybe it's sigma notation, or it's like bar notation that's telling you that we've abbreviated this 19 Alabtun. We've abbreviated this 13 Kinchel tune. Okay, if you abbreviated it, what is its expanded form? I took a lucky guess, and I said, well, we don't have one count of 19 Ablatun. We have a cumulative chain reaching all the way back to the Bak'tun period. So this is an enormous sum of days. I said, let's test it out mathematically. So I take this cumulative chain of 19 Ablatuns. I sum up the days. I get this very, very, very large day here. That's step one. And then, of course, we're going to divide that by the 260 and 365 day calendar and look for those fractional remainders. Okay, and sure enough, we'll get a remainder of 80, and we'll get a remainder of 355. And you chart those values from that base date, 3 how 3 mole, on the bottom. You count 80 days from 3 how, and you arrive to the day 1 how. You count 355 days from 3 mole, and you arrive at 13 mole. The target date is reached. This is the first time that a mathematical solution has been given that reaches the target date once you're given the correct base date. How good is that? But hey, we got one more to go. So remember, there was that funny notation before the Kinchel tune, right? Well, that's not one. That's not a single unit of 13 Kinchel tune. It is a cumulative chain of 13s. I use the same logic that the notation was said that they're abbreviating because again, they don't have enough space on the monument for these grand long counts. So it's basically a space saver, right? I mean, because they don't have enough stone to list out these grand long counts. So anyways, you expand out the notation. It's another cumulative chain of 13s. You add up that cumulative chain of 13s up to the Knichel tunes, you get this enormous sum of days. You divide that by 260 and 365. You look at the fractional remainders. You then chart the fractional remainders along a timeline. And in this case, they're moving forward from the previous mythic date. The first date went back in time. Now you're going forward in time. And sure enough, if you count 0 days from one ahau, no surprise, you get to one ahau. And if you count 345 days forward from 13 mole, you get to 13 Yaxchilan. Yay! The target date has been reached. First time that a mathematical solution actually reaches the target date. Okay? Okay. So now what we can do is that we can create a deep time chronology for this side of Stela F and see how things are meshing and computing. And this is what I've done here. And what's really, really important is that everything that's highlighted in gold here is divisible by 3 tunes. And this is absolutely wonderful. When you create a long count, this is our base state from the west side, 9, 15, 10, 3 how 3 mole, and you create a base state with those higher periods that count up to 13. Remember, when you're going back into deep Maya time, those higher periods have to cap out at 13. And when you apply the various distance numbers, subtract them and add them, you see that all of these distance numbers and long counts suddenly are multiples of 3 times 360. That's going to become really, or 3 tunes, that's going to become really, really important here really, really quick, because now we get to talk about the mythic events that are occurring on these dates. So on that first date of 1 ahau 13 mole, what we have here is what's being created. So that first big jump into deep time of a cumulative chain of 19 oblatunes. What's occurring there is the inception, possibly the birth or inception of a cycle that we've read for a very long time as the Yash C peak. Now, this is a cycle of 3 tunes, okay? It's a cycle that's all over the late classic period, and it's usually in conjunction with the first 3 tunes of the first kat tune of a Bak'tun. Here they're literally saying that it's the Yash, they're relating it to the Bak'tun. So it's the Yash C peak. It's something like the new something peak, okay? Or the great something peak, right? And guess who shows up? Here's Hun Wheats from Yaxchilan. The Maya would take a thumb and use that as the number 1. Hun Wheats is showing up. So he's this custodian god of that is helping ushering in this very important time period in deep time. And it's happening in a place called the Ik Nob Nal. Okay. Now the Ik Nob Nal, we actually have the Ik Nob Nal pictured on various ceramics. And this is a name that's given to a deep, deep primordial place in primordial time. And what we have here is the cosmic plate from the Met Museum. And it's mentioned here in the at the lower register here. This is a watery underworld where Chalk is, and he's just chopped his head, and out of his head is coming this primordial tree, and then out of that tree comes this sort of solar jaguar, and then we have a deep time inscription up above here. So, which also mentions this dark watery place. In fact, it gives it an even fuller name. It's like the dark lagoon place, or the dark pool place. Okay, so out of this dark pool, Chalk is rising. You have rising of this primordial tree. Now, what's really, really wonderful, and if you can stay with me to the end of this presentation, what's really, really wonderful is that up here, underneath the mythic inscription, we're given 2 distance numbers. And I was looking at this Saturday night, and by God, yes, we can read them. And in fact, I have a solution that cracks this chronology just beautifully. But you can see that the first distance number is basically, this is the deer day sign, and we have 3 days and 18 Wienals. That's 363 days. That's just 1 day off 364, the computing year that the Maya used for lunar calculations. How beautiful is that? Anyways, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but I just wanted to show you this. This is a conception of that dark watery pool in primordial time. And what does this dark watery pool that they mentioned here, the Eknob now, what is that? What does that mean in relation to time? Is this the void? Is this like our conception of the void before the Big Bang? Before there's time and space, in a way, out of this dark void of nothingness, or this deepest of the deep, emerges, births a cycle, right? Now, that's just the first jump of 19 oblitunes into deep time. The second jump gets even more interesting. The jump forward on 1 13 Yaxchilan talks about the sacrifice. Unfortunately, we don't have the god's name, a sacrifice of an individual. And it is the work of another individual. These individuals are probably expressed in Cocteau's iconography on the stela, but that's another discussion. But what I want to point out here is they are connecting the birth of this 3-tune cycle to a sacrifice. And this is a very, very, very pan-Mesoamerican idea where time cycles are connected to auto-sacrifice or sacrificial blood. We just talked about how the day sign cartouche is the sign for flowing blood. They're making this equating the flow of time to the flow of blood. Here we have a sacrifice being linked to the birth of a time cycle. What makes this really, really important, because on this monument and all of Cocteau's monument, he's then going to go forward in time and connect these primordial events to an actual historical sacrifice of a king that he defeated, that he was once a vassal of, Yaxchilan Ubak Kawil at Copan. So there's no doubt in my mind that he is talking about this inception of this primordial 3-tune cycle, 3-year cycle, connecting it to a primordial sacrifice, maybe to feed it or to enhance it in some way, and then he's going to connect that to a historical sacrifice. So past is prologue. As the gods do, so we do now. And this is a very pan-Mesoamerican idea. If you think of the Aztec myths in which Teotihuacan, where the gods sacrifice themselves in a fiery beer, right? They sacrifice themselves and immolate themselves and become the sun and the moon. Or is it the sun and Venus? But anyways, this is an idea that's repeated all over Mesoamerica. The sacrifice being equated to the initiation of a cycle of time. Pretty interesting stuff. Now, I know what you're asking me. You're going, Carl, how can we assign a number to a higher period order when its value remains undeciphered and the referential base date is unknown? Oh my God. I mean, we've got 2 huge strikes here, right? And my answer to that question is predictive mathematics. Okay. So let me show you a bit of my predictive mathematics. Predictive mathematics is sort of related to predictive texting. You know, you're on your phone, you're on your computer, you're using Word, and suddenly they give you the word that you think that you're probably going to use. Well, the Maya use predictive mathematics because the Maya calendar itself, this jewel, this gem of a mathematical system, is highly repetitive and it loops back on itself. Okay, so you can you can do computations without having to do actual math. A wonderful example of this is the count of Katuns. Okay, so what we have here is again, if you count 7,200 days in sequence from the day 4 Ahau, the next one day will be 2 Ahau. Okay, now let's start actually here with 13 Ahau. Okay, so so if I count 7,200 days, I go back 2 days to 11 Ahau. Count another 7,200 days, I go back to 9 Ahau, 5 Ahau, 3 Ahau, 1 Ahau, 12 Ahau, and then 10 Ahau. So what is, if you see the pattern here, if we go from 12 to 10, what is, if we count another 7,200 days, what is the next Ahau date that's going to be reached? If you say 8 Ahau, you're absolutely correct. So in this way, we have a pattern of steps through time divided by 7,200 days, but we don't actually have to do the math to calculate if we recognize the pattern, because we know that 10 Ahau is going to, the sequence will be 12 Ahau, 10 Ahau, 8 Ahau, 6 Ahau, 4 Ahau, 2 Ahau, and so forth, okay? So the Maya pioneered this, and they should be given full credit for this use of predictive mathematics. Another wonderful chart of predictive mathematics that we'll talk a little bit about is that every day of the Maya year, the 365 Ab, let's say that we're looking at day 1 of a month, day 6 of a month, day 11 of the month, day 16 of a month, each one of those days of the month can only be paired, mathematically paired, with 4 day names from the Tzolk'in. How cool is that? So your Tzolk'in day can be totally erased, but we know what it is. We can reconstruct it mathematically because of this very succinct constraint and pairing that's going on between the day of the month and the Tzolk'in day name. Okay. Now, I had a secret weapon, and God bless him, God bless him, God bless him. Before he died, Graham Atkinson made me an Excel calculator to check all the math. I made a series of tables that counted up to not the 24th order, but the 76th order. So again, at Coba, we saw the 24th. I counted up to the 76th. I'll let you know why I stopped at 76. It's really fascinating. Anyways, using Excel, Graham created this Excel calculator for me to check all my deep time long count calculations. And because of this, I could then have confidence in my own chart. So out of that, this is what I made. So again, let's just look at higher orders of with a 13 coefficient, starting with the Kanichel tune that we were using there on Stela F. So what I have here is I have 13 times 1 Kanichel tune, and I'm dividing that by 260 and 365, the 2 calendars, and you'll see here that the quotient remainder that I get is 0. In each case, when you keep adding 13 to a higher period and divide that by 260, you're always going to get a remainder of 0. So the Tzolk'in is zeroing out. Very, very important here. So one calculation is 13 times a single order. The second calculation is the cumulative total. So all the orders that came before it added to the current order. I divide that by 260 and 365. I also get a 0. The Tzolk'in the quotient remainder zeroes out. Why is that important? Okay. Oh, okay. I just want to show why that's important. Let's go back to Coba Stela 1, okay, and look at this cumulative chain, okay, of up to the 24th order. Okay, if I count this cumulative chain based on these charts and this predictive pattern right here, where every time I add a 13 coefficient, I get a sulking quotient of 0. That means that if I count the base state from 4 how 8 cum ku, and I count the base state that this is counting to, what do you think the base state's going to be in the sulking? Well, you'll see that every time you add a 13, you always get 0. So it's going to be 4 how something. This is the predictive mathematics. So I can count back 28 octillion days, and I don't have to do the math because I know I'm going to land on a 4 how. Similarly, if I count back 13 Bak'tuns from 4 how 8 cum ku, that base state is 4 how 8 zots. Morley did that in 1915. So when you add on these cumulative chains, when you add a 13, the sulking quotient remainder will always 0 out. This is why they are choosing these numbers, because it is the route of easy math. There's no guesswork involved. There's no calculation involved. You see, if you want to calculate back that far, at least with the sulking in this case. So let's return back to Stela F, Stela D, and Stela A, and actually look at the sulking days that they're traveling backward and forward to. And then we see something really special. On Stela F, they went from 1 how to 1 how on the second deep time jump. On Stela D, they're going from 7 how to 7 how. Stela A, they go from 6 how, 6 how. And Stela E, they go from 13 how, 13 how. Holy moly, look at the pattern here. What this means is no matter what these higher periods are, at least for the sulking 260-day calendar, they're always going to 0 out. There's no math. This is Maya math without tears. So even though that we have gargantuan leaps in time, we know that the quotient remainder is going to be 0 because of the pattern mathematics here. How cool is that? Okay, so that's with the sulking. So what we really have to focus in is in on the ob, the quotients of the 365 ob resulting remainders to tell us where we are in time. Now, there are more predictive patterns to be had, but I want to show you this here. So as I made these list of tables all the way up to the 76th order, I also made them for coefficients of 9 and 6, because those 19 and 6, because those are the coefficients on Stela E and Stela A. So again, let me just show you here something very, very interesting, is that when we go 19 times the 16th order, we divide by 260, 365, and we look at the quotient remainders, there's nothing really special here. But what really is special is when we do the cumulative chain, when we go 19 to the 16th order and we add up all those 19s, cumulative chain of 19s behind it, you get a quotient remainder of 0. Holy moly. If we go back here, that's going to be really useful, especially if we've got a period that has 19 on it. What this is telling us is if we take a higher period and we put 19 on it, at the 16th order cumulative total, we get a 0 quotient remainder. This is really important because, let me just go back here. So this only happens on the 16th order, the 28th, the 40th, the 52nd, and the 64th, and the 76th, if you look at prediction 3 here. So when you attach a 19 to a higher period order, there are really only, discounting the 76, there are really only 5 choices. Sure, you're going up 76 orders, but you've only got 5 choices where the sulking will 0 out. Now, so the criteria here has limited the criteria, the mathematical criteria limits the well of possibilities. You've just shrunk it from 76 possibilities down to 5. Aha! See, we are hot on the trail. We are hot on the trail. Through this pattern and through predictive mathematics, we can we can really focus in on what the possibilities of the higher orders are. The other prediction here, and which is just as important, is again the fifth order here. I have again, this is more predictive computing. This is even more amazing. When you have a coefficient on a higher order of 19 and 6, what happens, whether it's 19 or 6, if you start at the fifth higher order, the Bak'tun, the resulting quotient remainders for the sulking repeat in a cycle of 13. So we go 21, 60, 100, 200, we go 13, and then we get 20, 160, 100, 200. They repeat every 13 orders. How cool is that? This is sort of like that count of Catuns. So again, once you can recognize the pattern, you don't have to make the deep time calculation. You already know what it is because of these pattern sequences. You see? So this gives you another really, really great predictive tool. Once you lay out this menu of values, you can navigate through deep time lickety split without having to do the mathematical calculations, because the predictive mathematics will allow you to pin down the value. This is the magic. This is the mathematical magic of using cumulative chains and higher orders to navigate through time, especially those that have 13, 19, and 6. Because of this high predictability, this is why they are choosing. This is why they are choosing these higher periods, because of the predictive math involved. They don't want to sit here and calculate 28 octillion years, but through predictive mathematics, they can arrive to the result with very little effort. Okay, that's what I'm getting at here. Okay, so and again, very important on Stela A and Stela E, you can see that the sulking is going to have to zero out because we're going from 6 a how to 6 a how and 13 a how to 13 a how. And on these higher periods that are quoted, only really 5, the 64th, 57th, 40th, 28th, and 16th are going to zero out so that you will have this result from 6 a how to 6 a how. You see? So these have coefficients of 19 and 6, and it's only those 5 orders in which the sulking will zero out, and you will have this sort of timeline. So isn't that amazing? We've reduced it down from 76 possibilities down to 5, right? Of what these values could be. Now we got to go look for them. But stop the world. I want to get off, okay? Now, first of all, I have to check your pulses. Everybody, are you feeling that mental fog? Is your heartbeat, are you starting to cringe because we're looking at so much math? Again, this is the phobia that I warned about. If it's getting too much, basically stop the show and watch the video and take it in little pieces, okay? But first of all, stop the world. I want to get off because we were told by experts that really the Maya aren't going to count beyond the 24th order, as is whether it be deep past or the deep future, right? As is expressed at Coba. Well, again, I had the same bias. I said, Maya don't need to count. I mean, 28 octillion years, that's far enough. I mean, why would they ever want to count higher into deep time or deeper into deep time, right? So I had to let go of that bias if I was to come to the answers for or the solutions if I was coming on Stela D. Now, Stela Z is really wonderful. It's a really tight set of criteria. What we have here is an opening long count of 9, 16, 15, 0, 0, 0, 7 how, 18 pulp. And look what they're doing. So they're going from potentially that base date of 7 a how, and they're going to jump back 13 times something and arrive at 7 in the deep past. So you already know. Hey, you can say, I can use predictive mathematics. I know that the sulking is going to have to zero out in this gargantuan amount of time. If I divide that by 260, guess what? I'm going to move 0 days from 7 to 7. I don't have to do any math. So, aha, we are on to their modus operandi here. Okay, so we're moving from 7 to 7. And so what we need to do is find a higher period with a 13 coefficient where the sulking zeroes out. Unfortunately, they all zero out with higher periods with a coefficient of 13. But still, it's easy math up to this point. So what's really, really determinative here is the movement from 3 pulp to 18 pulp, which is only, I'm sorry, from 18 pulp to 3 pulp, which is really just a movement of 15 days. So meaning that when I take this gargantuan period and I divide it by 365, my resulting quotient remainder has to be a span of 15 days if I'm to travel from 18 pulp to 3 pulp. Now, this period here looks like a Knichel tune, okay? But when you look at it really, really closely, you see that there are subtle differences here. I just want to talk about a little bit of those differences. What I learned about charting the higher periods, I saw that again and again and again, the scribes are kind of running out of options and running out of names. So they recycle components from lower orders into higher orders. We see this in the Callaway tune and the Knichel tune, right? We see that they're recycling the suits sign, the hand with the little planting stick and jewel at the end of it, right? And so that suits will become used and recycled again to name the period. And then they'll give you just these slight little variations. And if we look at our suspect glyph, we see that he has a death eye. We see that he has no ear flare, that he has no feathers in the back of his, in fact, he has no feathers at all on his head as a typical bird. And he has this like little Trumpian little tuft of hair at the back, right? And he has this really exaggerated, almost like split beak. So all of these things, the death eye, this tuft of hair, the absence of feathers, the absence of ear feathers, all of these things are kind of telling me that there's a possibility that this is not a Knichel tune. Okay? Mathematically, remember what we're looking for here is just that 15-day remainder on a period that has a coefficient of 13. And so if we look on our charts, we consult our charts, what we find here is that we find that it's actually 2 possibilities. We have the cumulative total of the 36 order, okay, which you'll have a remainder of 15 days, or it is one period of the 13 times the 74th order, which is an incredibly massive number. So I took the cumulative chain of the 36 order. That would look like something like, let me see here, hold on, like this. Okay, so we have to, at this point, if you want to find a viable mathematical solution, you cannot look to the Knichel tunes. You have to look to even a deeper count that is either the cumulative chain of 13 times the 36th order or 13 times the 74th order to get that little teeny 15-day jump, right? So here we're done. We've broken the bias that the Maya can count up to potentially that the Maya are capping things at the 24th order. Now we're into calculations that are spanning up to the 36th, potentially the 74th order. But we've got a little bit of shade here, even though it's counting from this base state. We've got a little bit of shade because we don't really know what that main glyph is representing, right? So, but mathematically, we can use deep time cumulative counts and counting to find that needed 15-day shift between 18 pulp and 13 pulp. So it's a possibility. It's a possibility. And it's mathematically accurate. Okay. So, okay. So, now, finally, I just want to look at Stela A West. And Stela A West seems pretty clean. We're moving from 6 to 6. Yay! Yay! We say yay because we know that the sulking is going to have to zero out. No matter how big a magnitude this period is, it's 19 something. We're jumping 19 something from 6 to get to 6. Oops, sorry. Let me go. Okay. But what's really great about having that 19 coefficient, if you remember, is that we only have 5 choices. Did I have 5 choices here? No, I didn't give them. We only have 5 choices of where the sulking zeroes out on the higher period with a coefficient of 19. So we know we're going to go from 6 to 6. We're going to have a 0 coefficient. That's only going to happen on 5 orders. Which of those 5 orders? Well, what we need to move, what we need is a proper base state now. And this gets a little tricky because Stela A is a sister monument with Stela C. They're actually read in tandem. So if the initial base state here isn't viable, if I move a cumulative chain or 19 orders of any of those 5 options, not I use the base state of 6 here of the initial long count. It's not viable. So what I have to do is go to its sister monument, Stela C, and I look at other 6 options that are mentioned on Stela C. And the one that is 91000 6 13 Yaxchilan. And believe me, these monuments are read together because they have the same period endings, referential period endings, and iconography and a whole bunch of other things. So the 91000, that's really early in the 9th Bak'tun, the first Qatun of the 9th Bak'tun here. We can test and use that as a base state. I like the 9-1 because it's in other inscriptions at Copan that uses it as a referential launching point for deep time inscription. So I like that they're using it here as well. So sure enough, we use 91000 6 13 Yaxchilan as a base state. And sure enough, we find a period. We find the period of the 64th order that gives us the quotient remainder in the ob that we needed, 60 days, to go from 6 13 Yaxchilan to 6 13 Yash. But the big surprise here, oh my gosh, it only works if you go forward in time. Okay. So we go back to the grammar. All right, we go back to the grammar of this suits sign that basically it's saying it's a little bit ambiguous. They're not saying sutsomi, and they're not saying it will end in the future or will be planted in the future. They're just kind of saying ending, you know. Maybe they're intentionally obscure here. But anyways, you have to go forward in time that 60 days to hit to go from the base state 6 13 Yaxchilan to deep future time 6 13 Yash. All right. And this is, so that's 19 times the 64th cumulative order. So that's a huge chain of 19s all the way up to the 64th order. Let me tell you how big this number is. That number that's being counted, if it's being counted, is a number that is larger in magnitude. It's 1,700 times larger than all the estimated atoms in our current universe. Okay, just as a comparable. Okay, it's like, whoa, 1,700 times the number of atoms in the universe. Damn. Okay, that's almost unbelievably big. But I'm just saying that using the deep time charts and the correct base state, you can find mathematical solutions to each of these monuments. Now, our last monument is Stela E. Oops, sorry, I need to go forward. Okay, but before that, I just want to tell you something absolutely magical that happens. Why did I only count up to the 76th order? Because as I was looking at the pattern of quotient remainders in the in the cumulative totals, I found a pattern that was awesome. And what happens when you calculate the cumulative total? This is this chain of 19s, or the chain of 13s, or a chain of 6s, or a chain of 1s, or a chain of 11s, or a chain of 12s, or a chain of 16s. They all zero out in the sulking and the ob on the 76th order. This is like pure numerological magic. And I was able to verify this through our weapon of mass mathematical destruction created by Graham here. And so a really magical thing happens is that all cumulative chains, no matter what the coefficient is, zero out at the 76th order. Not only do they zero out, but after the first day after the 76th order, loops back in exactly the same position as the first day in which you started at the very beginning. So if we start at 4 8 cum ku, or any given date, and we count this cumulative chain of 13s, cumulative chain of 19s, cumulative chains of 11s, 12s, whatever you want to put in there, it zeroes out at the 76th order, and it loops back on itself and starts in exactly the same position of the calendar in which you started from. So that primordial time becomes now time. Isn't that something? So the deepest of deep time, the true mathematical in date of a cumulative count has this quality in which it loops back on itself, circles back, and positions itself as if you never left a day. Isn't that just wild? So that's now, don't know if the Maya calculated this, but this is an instant where primordial time becomes now time. The reason that's so significant is because given the right notation, you could have a historical long count in this primordial past, and they're both syncing perfectly, right? So suddenly a historical count can become a primordial count, and you wouldn't even know it mathematically, because they're both perfect twins of one another, perfectly parallel universes mathematically. Is that cool or what? Okay, so the biggest riddle of them all is Stela E. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Stela E. I have a solution for it, but there's too many unknowns. We don't know the base date. There isn't a base date that can come from Quirigua to count from. But what I just want to point out here, between the base date and the mythical date, we're going to move from 13 ahau to 13 ahau. Again, and we're going to use a period here that has a big 19 on it. So again, we only have 5 options of what that higher period could be, where the sulking is going to zero out so that you can travel 0 days from 13 ahau to 13 ahau. But again, it's the same modus operandi. It's the same easy math with no calculus that they're employing here. That's why they are choosing 9 and 6 and 13, because they can navigate through these deep time long counts, and it's as easy as stealing candy from a baby. Okay? Okay. I'm going to skip over. I think you've had enough mathematics. If you're still with me, you've had enough look at mathematics. But I want to sort of look a little bit, step back and look a little bit philosophically about what does all this counting actually mean and the rising magnitude? Why are they going so far back in time? If you think about it, how counting and rising magnitude expands our own consciousness in the present day. And I know I'm in California, so I know this is sounding kind of California fruitcake, but I think what we kind of have here is a mathematical moksha moment in the sense that as you become aware of larger and larger magnitudes of time and space, time being counting, your consciousness also expands. And what I mean about that is that if you look back at the beginning of the 20th century, in 1922, before Edwin Hubble made his big discoveries, we thought that we were one galaxy, right? We were one lonely little galaxy, and that's all that was to the size of the universe. Edwin Hubble steps in, and he finds out that we live in a much bigger expanding universe that is actually 93 billion light years. So we went in 1 year from a universe that was 100,000 light years wide to 93 billion light years wide, filled with, I don't know, at last count, 400 million galaxies. 400 billion galaxies. Wow, that's breathtaking. So that expansion, that mathematical expansion of time and space of an expanding universe, suddenly, wow, we become a little, we have this Satori-like moksha moment of expanding consciousness. We're part of a much bigger place than we ever thought. Now, what's interesting is when Cocteau is making a comment about these deep time jumps, he keeps saying that he witnesses it. He witnesses the deep time, and he's actually dressed in some of the garb of the deep time gods, right? Patron gods, right? So he's saying, I witnessed this. And so if he's actually witnessing this time expansion, as he's going back in time, recounting previous creations back to 28 octillion years, you can see that this causes a much wider expansion of conception. And in a way, he is linking his reign to the larger flow of time and ancestry when he's doing these calculations. And he's stepping back into deep time, and he's saying, I witness it. And he's witnessing it as the 311 peak Lord. Okay? This Lord of the 33 Bak'tun. Okay, which is really, really great as well. So expanding levels of magnitude create expanding levels of consciousness, connecting one's life to the farthest reaches of time and space. I think that's worthy of consideration. Okay, so now I know what you're thinking. You're saying, oh, I'm feeling queasy. I'm feeling sick. Please stop talking about math, Carl. But and give me something that I can sink my teeth in. I'm not feeling good that these base states, that the scribes are hiding these base states, and this is like a game of peekaboo, right? Why are they hiding these base states? Why are they not just outright telling us about the expanding notation as well as the proper base state to count from? Well, I think there's a couple of options there. Is one, they don't want other maybe it's rival, they don't want other mathematicians figuring out their calculus. Maybe we're not just privy to their preferences. Another option is that when you study these deep time counts again and again and again, they will throw shade in, or they will introduce a real rookie error to hide the calculation. And you have to resolve that rookie error before you can actually make your timeline. And I think, and I don't know, the Hopi do this when they do a sand painting. If they do a perfect sand painting, they introduce an error, right? Some indigenous communities, when they make a beautiful brocade or they make a beautiful weave, they'll introduce an error into the weave. So there could be some sort of ritual involved here. I wish I knew the name of it, in which they're purposely introducing an error or shade to hide the calculation, because this calculation isn't meant for men to see. Okay, and a calculation that might be so perfect, but that perfection must be hidden. So we could have something else going on here ritually, that it's mandated that they insert an error. It's mandated that they obfuscate. Okay, but so can we use this knowledge of grand long counts and cumulative counting that we see at Yaxchilan and also at Coba, and now that we see at Coba, to resolve these vexing mathematical equations? Can we use this to solve other deep time inscriptions? And yes, they do, especially if we have examples where we have chains of higher period orders with repeating coefficients. I want to go back to Yaxchilan here really quickly and show you something, expand on this a little bit more. So we saw here that, they were calculating up to 13 times the 13th order. Now, this is just the right half of step 7. There's a left half that I'm not showing you because it's rather lengthy. We'll get there in just a minute. So now that we know that counting back in time, this is a literal count of 13 higher period orders and not symbolic. These aren't symbolic zeros that you're just tagging on to a long count. What we can actually do is calculate. We can calculate and actually calculate back to the base date from which this grand long count first started counting from. Okay, that's the first thing. What's the base date that I'm counting from, right? And what you see here, what they've done is they've taken a cumulative chain and they've added it onto a historical long count here. But you can add up that sum of days, which is really quite large, and we can now have a calculated timeline of a base date of 4-8 Yash. This is exactly what I've done, and I've actually created a whole chronology that is linking the mythic with the historical. On the left side of the monument, what you have the mythic portion of the inscription, and you say to yourself, well, how do you know, Carl? How do you know that this mythic is supposed to be connected with the historical? And the reason is this little glyph right here. This is the distance number indicator. It's the utsaka. It's literally saying the passages are ordered, and they're meant to be ordered and connected to the passages after, right? So that little piece of that little piece of rhetorical speech there is telling you that what has come before is to be connected to what's to come after, the utsaka. It is ordered. These are ordered in conjunction to what is to come after. So that's telling you that these are supposed to be connected. So the question is, how do we connect these two? And does that base date of 18 Yash, 8 Yash have any relevance? And it does. But this is a much longer discussion that I can come back at a later date and show you. But real quickly, we have 3 dates that are given. And again, Sulking and Ob, Sulking and Hob, and we have 2 intervening distance numbers. So the challenge is to connect this chronology that is given on the monument to this chronology. And lo and behold, with a little bit of luck and an understanding of history and grammar, that's exactly what I've been able to do. But it's a much larger discussion, takes about 30 minutes. We don't have time for that, but I want to show you how productive, when you apply cumulative counts, how you can start to create timelines that is connecting deep past with historical present. Okay. Okay, and by the way, they're talking about 3 sacrifices of 3 gods. Again, they're repeated again and again. You have the first sacrifice, which is probably the maize god. You have this the second sacrifice of a god, and then you have a third sacrifice of a god. And these 3 sacrifices are being related to these sacrificial captives in historical time. And then you have panels of his father and his grandfather who are also doing ball game sacrifices. So we have 3 on either side of this step. So we've got granddad and we've got father performing 3 sacrificial sacrifices at the Yaxchilan ball court. And then we go back in primordial time. You see rhetorically it makes sense. We go back in primordial time where we have 3 sacrifices of 3 gods in a ball game, and they say it happens in the name of the ball game and the name of the ball court in primordial time is exactly the same name given in historical time. So it's really, really wonderful. But again, I'll come back at a later date and give you the full chronology. So we have another instance here in the Dresden Codex on page 52, where we just have this huge chain of 13s. Previously, scholars, and rightly so, thought, well, this is really just 13 cumulative days, 13 times 13, that you can use and navigate through counting. But now that we know something about cumulative chains, potentially this is expressing a cumulative chain up to the 17th higher order period. Okay, I'm having some success with this as well, and relating it to the lunar phases and eclipse phases in the Dresden Codex. But I need a greater knowledge of the eclipse cycles to see if those multiples are embedded in this giant jump of days, if that's what it is. Also, most recently, as we were preparing for our final manuscript on the Palenque painted, Halsey painted text, this is a painted text that is now completely effaced, but is above the oval tablet in the Palenque House E throne room, where you had generations after generations of Maya kings set into kingship. And but many moons ago, 19 years ago, I was able to take photos taken by Linda Sheely and also Alfred Maudsley. We were able to make a merge, find the marriage line between those photos based on architecture and existing hieroglyphic writing, and basically put this back up digitally. Do I have it? No, I don't have it. We put this digitally back up into the into House E with the oval tablet and with the Del Rio throne. We actually digitally reassembled that as well. And so we were doing the final report, and I said, you know, I'm going to give it one more go. I'm going to see if I can't reconstruct this initial long count. What makes this so important to Maya mathematics is there's only 1 or 2 equations in which the Maya lay out the full equation, where they count from a historical or mythic date into deep time to an actual long count. There's 1 or 2 of them. So if we can reassemble this mathematically, we're going to have a really great equation of deep time calculus to work from and to understand Maya mathematics. So I gave it a go, And you can see here that the target date is 9 Eek, seeding of Sak, and this is the accession of the maize god progenitor. We know the long count of this date. It's 20010-2, I believe. Yes. So this was the challenge. Is we have down here on the bottom of the screen is that we have the long count of the triad progenitor, 100010-2, and then we have this distance number counting back to a full long count, right? But and again, I can only reference this, but even though it seems like an impossible task, you can take A and minus B and actually reconstruct C here. And the reconstruction is absolutely solid, and it's embedded with sacred multiples that are incredibly pleasing to the mathematical and astronomical heart. And I know that's a cliffhanger, but I'm going to have to leave it there. But what I want to mention is what was essential, incredibly essential to breaking this equation and completing it in full was that initial long count of 20010-2, which is the accession of the triad progenitor. The only way this equation works is if the higher periods above the Bak'tun cap out at 13. 0 doesn't work, 19 doesn't work. Got to have those 13s. So this is very, very similar to what we just saw at Yaxchilan, where you had a cumulative chain of 13s connected to a long count, a historical long count. In this case, it's a mythic long count. But it's very similar mathematics are taking place here, you see, at Yaxchilan and Palenque. Anyways, I will give you the full solution after publication at a later date. But I just want to show you the similarity and the parallels in mathematics at Yaxchilan and mathematics at Palenque. Just so that you know, Carolyn, if you're still with me, is that the inscription at Yaxchilan predates. It's one of the earliest cumulative example of a grand long count with a cumulative chain. Okay, I want to return back to the cosmic plot, the cosmic plate. This is the Easter egg that, if you were patient enough, that I wanted to share with you. This actually happened Saturday night at 3:30 a.m. And basically, I just want to show you the text and the distance numbers that are involved with. And I found a mathematical solution using the charts that I showed you from those deep time tabulations. So basically, at the top of the plate, we have a wonderful, very lengthy mythic mythic date with an elaborated description of what's going on. And of course, they're saying that it's happening in the Eek Nob Nal. I mean, the Eek, the black cenote place, the black watery pool place, the five, potentially the five flower place. Okay. So they're giving you the place, the locale. The action is this a verb that we're it's debated about what it said, but it's talking about an emergence potentially and a sprouting out of the earth, the holy sprouting, right? And we have this date here. Below this inscription, we have two distance numbers. One of the distance numbers is quite clear. It's 3. This is the head of the deer on the right. It's basically a keen sign. So this is signaling to us that we've got 3 days and 18 we now, so that's 363 days. The working hypothesis is that we're going to move back from the lower date. The lower date is probably the death. You can see the death verb here of a historical personage. Could be a god, but I think it's a historical personage. So the obdate's very clear. It's 6 Pope. Now we know from predictive mathematics and Morley's tables that if the obdate has a coefficient of 6, this eroded sulking date that comes before it can only be one of 4 choices. It has to be, so again, on the top here, if we're looking at Morley's little chart I have here on the right, if it's the 6th day, it is the 6th day. This right next to the pulp is a hieroglyph for walk. It's a little cloud hieroglyph, and it means 6. Okay, and so we have 6 pulp. So if we have a 6 on the month, this eroded glyph has to be Akbal, Lamet, or Bin. Bin works, and you can see that we have remnants of 2 bars, and potentially it's either 2, 3, it's either 12, 13, or 14, right? So we have really confined criteria of what the coefficient and the sulking date can be. You test out all of those, and you count back that 363 days from our first floating distance number, and you reach the date 13 oak 8 pulp. Okay, this is inferred, right? This jump is inferred. And I absolutely got a shock of lightning when I saw that 13 oak 8 pulp, because I knew that the 13 oak is mirroring the 13 oak in the mythic in the mythic part of the passage. So again, just as we were going from 1 how to 1 how, 13 how to 13 how, 6 how to 6 how, if we go from 13 oak to 13 oak, the sulking, the quotient sulking remainder has to be 0. It means that this second big time jump that's jumping from this intermediate date, and this intermediate date is the launching date. This is like the launching date that's going to jump back into deep time to this mythic date. Okay, so we know that the quotient remainder of this period, which is most likely monstrous, has to equal 0, because we're going from 13 oak to 13 oak, right? And then now we need to go from 8 pulp to 8 to 8 zotes. I saw automatically that span was 305 days. So I needed a higher order period that had a 260 remainder of 0 and a 365 quotient remainder of 305. And I got one. And in fact, I got 2 possibilities. So, and I checked all the charts using 19 and 6. The 13 was preferable. And if you jump back, 1 unit of 13 times the 22nd order, we're still within those 24 orders. If you jump back 1 unit of 13 times the 22nd order, it will give you the quotient remainders that will get you from 13 oak 8 pulp to 13 oak 8 zotes. There is one other option. It's 13 times the 66 order cumulative total. And the reason I like this option is because it's divisible by 364 and also 54. This second distance number jump, whatever this is, this could be like in kind to like our 311 peak, where 3 is being multiplied to the 18, which is 54. So a multiple of 54 and a multiple of 54 times 364, which this is, of course, just 1 day off of the second distance number, both of those are divisible into this 66 cumulative, 13 times the 66 cumulative total. Now, I'm not saying that this is positively what the Maya used. What I'm saying again and again and again, you can use these cumulative counts to jump backward and forward into deep time and hit all these target dates again and again and again and again and again. So what the Maya probably did here, let's say they didn't want to go back to the 66, 13 times the 66 order, or even don't even want to go back to 13 times the 22nd order. What they had the ability to do, which I don't because I haven't figured it out, but they could take a derivative calculation off of these big time spans and with the same resulting remainders. That is possible, but you have to be really good in mathematics and really proficient in the calendar, which the Maya were. But again, this is the first time that anybody can propose a mathematical solution that agrees with all three target dates and the two distance numbers. And that's really, really special. Hidden hands came out so that I could share this with you, help, and that I could share this with you on the anniversary of the Era Day. Finally, I just want to mention, these are just the calculations and the resulting remainders here. I just want to make one last plea, and it's more than a hope. The Maya mathematicians and astronomers, the deeper we get into these deep time mathematics, and even everyday mathematics of the long count, and this incredible jewel called the Maya calendar, we see that these are the best mathematicians and astronomers on the planet, and would remain so for a very, very long time. And when you look at the timeline in the history of mathematics, there is no mention of Maya mathematicians or Maya milestones. The Maya easily invented zero 400, probably 600 years before it was invented in India. Does it ever get a mention? No. Okay. We need, if you have any influence in publications that deal with the history of mathematics and astronomy, the Maya need to be mentioned. They were tracking the tropical year. They were tracking the sidereal year. They were tracking all of the planets. You know, just read Victoria Bricker's latest article on the 819 day count and the tracking of the outer planets. I mean, it's just, these were the smartest mathematicians in the room. Okay, and they are given no mention in the history and their milestones of the invention of zero, the tracking of the sidereal year, and even the nomenclature. They're counting. What I just showed you here are the biggest numbers ever calculated by an ancient civilization, bar none. They beat everybody. Okay, they beat, as I mentioned in my article, they beat Archimedes' calculation of how many sand grains could fill the Aristarchan universe, right? Easily. They just wipe them off. I mean, and so just being able to name these higher periods and numbers and to count these vast distances, larger than distances that we count today and quantities that we count today, that is worthy of mention. So I hope that in the future we can begin to fill in Maya milestones of great moments in mathematical history. Okay, thank you for your patience. I know that was tough, but I hope we ended on a high note there.
All right. Thank you, Carl. This is fantastic. Also, how far back? Yeah, I mean, the slide you just showed, did the other side of the world know about precession?
Okay, this is as far as I know, in my limited, and please have Barb, please chime in here. As far as I know, only two great stargazing cultures in the world figured out precession. One was the Greeks, and I believe the others were the Chinese. So Barb's reconstruction of the 311 Peak Almanac that fits so succinctly to the cycles of precession. Again, what is precession? Precession is the drift of the fixed background stars. So if you go out in the evening and you see the dog star of Orion rise over this peak, and you wait basically 1 year later, you can get the fixed sidereal period of the year. This is exactly what Michael Grove had just. This is exactly what Michael Grove had just lectured on, right? But as far as I know, there's maybe I don't know, Barb. In your research, did you find other cultures other than the Greeks and the Chinese? And Hutch is here as well that could weigh in that were tracking precession.
No, but then that's really not my area of expertise.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was really kind of an accident that I figured it out for the Maya, independently of Michael. But then when Michael and I figured out that each of the that the other had in fact reached a lot of the same conclusions, then we started collaborating fiercely, and a whole lot of very interesting stuff has come out of that. Michael currently is in Tikal.
Yeah.
He spent the day at Yashha with Martha Macri and Martha's friend Jessie Ann, and so Michael is perhaps not online and wasn't able to attend this event, but I'm sure he'll be interested in watching the replay. He'll be back in Sacramento Wednesday evening, and just FYI, otherwise I'm sure he'd be here, but he's traveling with friends.
So I've been testing Barb's 311 peak almanac and hypothesis again and again and again, and it just keeps coming up roses. And I find it, again, you think that the long count is a big enough tracking system to track the days and the planets, but they obviously were employing even larger almanacs of 33 Bak'tuns. And Barb has rebuilt, from the clues given, she's rebuilt that almanac, and I think she's spot on. I think you're spot on, Barb, because it just keeps working. The proof is in the pudding, as we say.
Well, the fact that your higher order numbers, your vast higher order numbers, are divisible by that 33 times 144,000 days, that's pretty amazing. And
yeah, and there's even other mathematical gymnastics related to 311 peak that it just keeps working. And if you think, and we talked about this, Barb, and Dave Stewart talked about this in the order of days. He said that on era day, you have the periods count up and stop at 13 Bak'tuns, and then you go forward in time. The inscriptions that Palenque tell us, you go forward in times to the next peak tune, which is 20 Bak'tuns.
13 and 20, exactly.
13 and 20 is 33 peak. It's 33 Bak'tuns. So
yeah,
so
I mean, this is I know we would love to take a deep dive into that right now, but we can't. I can only ask Jim and the Aztlander staff to give us an opportunity for a hearing on the 311 peak formula and the stations that I've reconstructed. Get Michael on board, have you there, have me there, have a little maybe a roundtable on that topic. But I would like to jump back to, if you could pull up the image, Quirigua Stela F West. I want to look at that because we're talking about the 311 peak title, and it's positioned precisely before you do this big time. Precisely before.
Let me go back to, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because the 311 peak almanac is mentioned on Stela F in relation to the title given to Coctilu. Let me go back here. You went west or east? Because
west.
The 311 peak
is west. There it is, right there. That's the west side.
Yeah, this is the east side.
Oh, wait a minute. This is the east side?
That's the east side. So
okay,
right
before
the east side.
All right, east side. Then that's it. All right. Then,
yeah, right.
In other words, this is right before what
launch.
you consider to be your formula for the big leap. In other words, this is the clue, however you read it, 0 hablatuns, however it's working there. It's a
0 to alautuns, yeah.
Is it allow tunes or
It's saying 311 peak ahau, and then it says 0 to allow tunes. It is completed or planted 19 oblotunes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the allow tune. Okay, yeah, I haven't committed those really higher level formula science to memory, but yeah, there it is. I mean, and I mean, what I can tell you from memory, and again, this is a topic that really needs to be presented in detail, just like you've done for us, is that this king, Kaktilu Chanchak, he's only just become king, like 4 months earlier. This is, he's new. And Stela F is the first place that he does this fantastic time leap stuff. And he's new to the 311 peak title because he cannot take it. He cannot take it until a triple station has passed. And the stations that I've determined work just like the 819 day count stations, calculated from era day forward in leaps of 18,900, excuse me, in leaps of 3 times 8660, whatever that is right now.
8660, yep.
Yeah, I mean, I could do the math right now, but I won't. Roughly 24,000 days and change, which is roughly 71 years. It's roughly 71 years. And so one of those triple stations, he's lived through one of those triple stations in his lifetime. He's now king, and that is what gives him the credentials to take the title. And if you look at every other king that takes the title, and there's half a dozen of them, they take this title in connection with some deep time jump on that monument. Naranjo Altar One is another example. And so he's only been king for like 4 months. I mean, I'm again pulling this out of my head, but I think that he has taken the title at first opportunity now that he's king. And the first thing he does in the very next glyph block is this monstrous time leap. It's like he's been waiting for decades to do it. So
just as a reference, this 311 Pika How title is very, very similar to the way in which like Khatun titles are bestowed upon a leader. Not mathematically the same, but in manner of granting a title related to a time cycle. So you have a 3 Khatun Lord or a 2 Khatun Lord or a 1 Khatun Lord. Well, again, this 311 Peak Lord title is only given when your lifespan is touching 3 of these 311 peak stations. So
the stations are themselves 8,660 3 times 8660 days apart.
Correct.
And the formula for this is on one of the Tikal bones, and that again is a whole other topic. This has been known about for quite a while, but no one really ever did anything with it until Matt Looper published one of his Lift Dwellers notes on it. I forget how long ago that was, but that was the first time that anyone actually put it in print. And then soon thereafter, Michael Grove included it in his doctoral dissertation. And around that same time, and independently of Michael, because he and I didn't know each other at that time, this would have been back in 2007 or so, I started looking at the kind of microcosm, macrocosm of 3 times 8660 being equivalent to 3 times, being equivalent to 11, 3 times 11 or 33 times 144,000. And the reason it is equivalent is that they take you back to the same calendar round date. In other words, the interval between them is either 3 times 8660 or it is 3 times 11 times 144,000. And both of those take you back to the same calendar round date. And the Maya actually clearly figured that out a long time ago. So, but that's really another topic. I think that in terms of the topic that you're diving deep into, it's really hard for me to even formulate questions to ask you. I mean, and I've been aware of this. You and I have been dialoguing about it for a long, long time. I just wanted to suggest that for some of these higher order periods whose names we don't know, but which consist of recognizable signs, that we start looking at how those same signs function either elsewhere in the script or in the languages. One of them, I don't remember which Quirigua monument, whether it was Stela A or Stela D, had a leap to the 64th order.
Yeah,
with a suffix that reads Bish, and this is dependent upon a decipherment of mine. And Bish in the Yucatec Cordomex dictionary means octave. And it so happens that 64 is 8 times 8, and that might be an accident, or it might be a clue that they're actually giving you, there's your term right there,
right.
19.
Yeah, so
but the sign, no, it's the sign on top of the Hob sign.
Yeah, correct. So
that little bird sign, that little thing in the middle that's got a bee with those little wings on either side, that reads Bish.
That's an infix speech. Correct.
And that word in Yucatec means octave.
Wow.
Octave. I mean, that's not the only, it actually refers to a unit of time where the end of it is the beginning of it. It returns to 0, just like a musical octave does. So that may be a derivative. That might not be its fundamental meaning, but it was just an idea that I had off the top that just happens to correspond to your 64th order. And then you had there's another unreadable sign with a 5 prefix on it.
Let's look at Stela E.
With a 5 prefix on it that looked an awful lot like one of the Lords of the Night. And the Lords of the Night, or rather, there it is right there, that thing. That sign right there, well, if you just, it's got 19 sitting on top of the sign, which looks a lot like, I think it's either G4 or G5 of the Lords of the Night. I think you need to look at a pretty good inventory of the Lords of the Night, not just Thompson, not just what was known back in the 70s. But I think that might turn out to be very close to one of the Lords of the Night as a counting unit.
Oh, how interesting! Because this kind of like head of the maze god with this doodad on the back of the head, that shows up at Yaxchilan hieroglyphic stairway on one of the names of the higher orders there as well. It's not as elaborate as this, but it's very, very similar. So yeah, and look everybody, look at what this period, this period of 6. I have to, there's so many wonderful things about Stela E. Stela E records an actual eclipse. Okay,
a total solar eclipse. Well,
okay, which is right here, which I've outlined in purple. So these deep time jumps, there's a high likelihood that they are incorporating vast counts that are incorporating multiples of eclipses. And the reason that's cluing me into that is if you look at the 6 here, it's named after the 6, the 6 higher period. It's named after the black pool place. Right. It's on the cosmic plate and on Stela F. So they're naming, again, a higher order period is both a god and a place name in deep time. And this is a perfect example of that, where they are naming a place, the dark watery pool, after the higher order. Not only is the dark watery pool named after the higher order, but that is the name of the plaza at Quirigua in which the stela are set into.
Wow.
Okay, so and it's also a name that Cocklew probably and Matt Looper, Enlightening Warrior, points this out quite blatantly, right? So the name that they give the plaza in which these stela are set into is the dark watery lagoon place, right? The dark watery place. So it's as if the stelas themselves are inhabiting this void in which these sacred cycles are born out of, this watery void, right? I mean, it's really, really, really deep stuff. Yeah, and so the numerology associated with these, and also the names that are given to them, you're absolutely right. They're part and parcel to now this is what you have to watch out for. There are sacred place names in the Dresden and other places that people see as sacred place names, but they also hold numerical value of higher orders. And because we weren't aware of that, Spindon tried to tell us. He was the prophet. He tried to tell us that this was the case. Because you think a sacred place name is a sacred place name, but it's also the name, it's also a numerical term for a quantity. And this is blatantly displayed here on the Wak Ek Nob Nal, the sixth dark watery pool. And you're right, up here on this 1905, possibly 1905 Maze Null. I have no idea, but yeah, it's very similar to Lords of the Night, and there might be a numerical equivalency there. So that's a little doorway. That's a little doorway that we can open and look into. So I'm really grateful for you pointing that out. Yeah, yeah.
Carl, can you move ahead to where you showed the first slide of the east side of the Yaxchilan stairway?
Yeah, let me go. You know, did it have the computations?
Well,
let me go back to here. Yeah.
that's the west side, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, no, you want me, the left side? You want me to look at the left side?
Next side. Next slide. Yeah, there. No, go back.
Yeah.
Go back to the first one. Yeah, there. Now, look how there is a bird up in his headdress.
Yeah, that's actually a fish. That's a fish out of a water lily. That's basically what this god of the 13th order and the Hun Wheats. This is a headdress of Hun Wheats. So I know that the iconography is sparse there, but there's just enough to show that the high probability. So he's dressed as Hun Wheats, god of Hun Wheats Ab of this 13th order. And it says right here, just as clear as day, he is in the guise of the Yash Cheat Hun Wheats Na Khan, right? The 3 Khatun Lord, he of 20 captives, bird jaguar of Yaxchilan, right? So it's very clear there. Another thing that Vicky was it Vicky no, not Victoria Bricker. Mary Miller pointed out in the wonderful book, The Sport of Life and Death, that wonderful book on the ball game. You see this little, why do they have a little ball player on top of a little ball player? This is really quite strange. Why is there a ball court step here? The ball court said this isn't making any sense. But then what she said is that these are the numbers of steps that lead up. These are the same number of steps that lead up to the top of the platform on Temple 33, where I believe it's Temple 33, where this inscription sits, right? And what she's saying here, this is a historical portrait of them up on the top of the temple with the same number of steps here. That they are throwing down a captive, and the top of the temple is in view of the Yaxchilan ball court, right? So it's all part of one complex. So she said this might be mythic, but this right here is the historical reference of them taking the captives to the top and then throwing them down and rolling them down that giant temple. And I think she's absolutely correct, right? And that this correspondence in steps is also the correspondence of steps it takes you to get up to the top of the platform. These are little details that help us understand this narrative of these 3 sacrifices of 3 ball court captives. Just so that you know, the ball court says it's the 3. two different readings. It's the three victories or it's the three sacrifice ball court. Here's the name of it right here. Can you see my cursor?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So at Tikal, there's actually there's a three ball court plaza at Tikal, as Johann Beigel had pointed out to me. But we also have this name of the ball court at Tonina, at Naranjo, at Yaxchilan, and one other area, one other. So it's my hope that I can present this deep time chronology, linking this deep primordial time with the historical. And the history, there's a lot of history in here because Bird Jaguar, this historical ball court event is like 15 years before he even exceeds to power. Why is he choosing? Why is he choosing? I think it's about 10 or 15 years before he's even exceeds to the throne. He had a lot of trouble. There's a lot of trouble of him acceding to the throne. So even though he can't be with his father when he exceeds to the throne, he cannot be with his father because his father's dead by the time he exceeds. He can be with his father and his grandfather, who are also doing ball court play on either side of him, and they can meet in deep primordial time together. And they can link each of those historical ball games to those three historical ball game sacrifices to these three ball court sacrifices. It's really, really beautifully historically poetic. And this is all in preparation for a renewal of the Yaxchilan ball court. So it's as equally deeply historical and architectural in its design and in its referencing as it is mythical and numerological.
Carl, can you show us the verb, the renewal verb? Have you got that on a slide?
You mean the renewal? Oh, yes. That's well, okay, Barb, do you want to let this out? Okay, here we go.
Sure.
This is it. Okay, so let me just go back here to the step. See the name down here? Our name is the three victory or the three defeats.
Probably defeats. I think this is a paper that Peter Biro and I and Michael published in Mexican maybe 10 years ago, where we talk about that particular verb. Yeah, it's probably more likely to be defeats, but we're talking about defeats of sacrificial victims in this case.
And we have Ochchan, and then it says it happened at the Black Cenote 6, probably Sky Place. Okay, now you go over here to the historical monument, and they named the ball court exactly in the same way. This is that three defeats ball court, stair. And this is what was key. I went over to Barb's and I said, Barb, I am so close to cracking this chronology and linking the deep primordial passages with the historical. I'm so close I can taste it, but I don't understand. And Barb says, let's go back to the grammar. Let's go back to the beginning. The verb for the historical event, I thought was reading Hatz or Hatzan or something like that. And basically Hatz means to strike. But what Barb pointed out to me is that Dave Stewart read a paper that Hatz is also referential to inauguration. And he shows quite beautifully, I think it was at Naranjo or was it at Caracol?
Yeah, there are several texts in Naranjo that are particularly
so that Hatz to inaugurate. So they use this verb to say when they inaugurate a road, okay, inaugurating a Sac Bay. So this just simply isn't to strike. This is in reference to the inauguration of the renewal of the Yaxchilan ball court. And once you have that little tidbit, that historical tidbit, remember, because historical actions are going to reflect primordial actions, that opened the door that opened 10,000 doors that then allowed me to link primordial time with historical time. But that's a much, I have to show you the mathematical steps on how we do that later. But this HOTS was key. HOTS-on or HOTS. This was key to understanding how history was reflecting mythology. Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
I think it's probably HOTS-na, a passive.
Yeah,
and then if you go to Chorty, you find that there's an additional meaning of HOTS. That means it doesn't just mean to strike, but it means to apply something to a surface.
Yes.
I've subsequently been looking carefully at those Naranjo texts in terms of Bak'tun. I think they are, in fact, applying stucco.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on.
They're applying stuccos. They're renewing the whole central plaza in anticipation of a major period ending. Or actually, I think it's a major New Year's event, which is what comes up next. So I'm a little bit rusty on it, but that's what it is.
Yeah. So then what you do is you jump over to Yaxchilan Ball Court, and it's covered. It's covered in monuments and altars and markers down the ball court, but they're all eroded, and you can at least imagine, but we don't have any evidence, but you can see how these markers are talking about the renewal and the inauguration of the ball court. This is what this is referencing. This is the inauguration of the ball court at Yaxchilan. Probably it's maybe one of its first major reconstructions, because again, it's happening, I can't quite remember, but 10, 15 years before the accession of Bird Jaguar.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what was key. And believe it or not, that historical insight allowed me to go back and look at the primordial texts, which are an enigma wrapped in an enigma. The numerology, right? They don't want you to break this thing. They do not want you to link the two, and they purposely obfuscate, or we just don't have enough text, because remember, there's a whole lot of steps, and this is the only step with survivable, readable chronology. Most likely the other risers on either side, which there's multiple ones, which are relating to the women that are doing sorts of conjuring in connection. But these three in the center are unique because they're carved from a different stone. It's kind of a light brownish stone, and they seem to be set in together to be a triad. And we have to go look at what Dad and Grandpa are doing and relate it to chronologically and mythically to what these guys, what's being done here.
Well, I threw in a comment in the comments.
Yeah.
You don't have to dig it out, but I can just comment on it again, that in fact all of these monuments, and I'm prepared to say across the board that Maya monuments in general are tied to codices that we no longer have.
Right.
Yeah. No doubt. Absolutely.
And that the mathematical data, the astronomical data, the historical data that underlies all of what seems to be obfuscation is all in those documents that we will never ever see. And that it's all restricted from the get-go. It's only a small percentage of the population that had access to those manuscripts and had access to the history and the deep time stuff, the ability to read the deep time stuff on the monuments. It's probably just a few people.
What I love about this cosmic plate is that the simplicity of three dates and two distance numbers, it couldn't be it in its simplicity. It's so beautiful, right? But of course we don't know what's going on with that big time leap. But
well, we can read that statement. There are some new decipherments there. One of which is stuff that you and I have been.
Oh yeah, well we won't get into that because it's so deep. No, we're not getting into that.
But the other one, that little curl sign.
I know
that little curl sign. That's a new reading by Christian Prager.
Yeah.
Of the Bonn Textdatenbank my hieroglyphic database project, and it's published. But that sign reads "Cook," which means sprout.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far down in that rabbit hole
No, I
because,
don't either. Just
but I know it's so
mentioning it.
exciting. But now we have a chronology, at least a perspective chronology, to hang our hat on, because the two things you have to know, as you well know, when you make a decipherment, we have to know where we are in time, and we have to have good grammar. Okay, those
Well,
are the two things that's going to help you uh, uncover the depth and the multivalency of these stories.
well,
And also, I want to say something that Sim had mentioned to me early on. He said, "Well, Carl, maybe this obfuscation is he said that maybe it's related to like how like in Silicon Valley and Oracle and Mac and all of them, they're super paranoid and they don't want to share trade secrets. So in business today, computing and trade secrets and formula are highly guarded, and they don't give out that because those algorithms are worth billions of dollars, right? They're the secret sauce that run these number machines, right? So in sense, this could be something that is related to just business as usual and ego, that they obfuscate because they don't want the trade secrets easily shared with visiting mathematicians or scribes. Yeah.
It's terrible what the orange man is doing to the patents of Columbia. I think that's just terrible.
Mm.
But besides that, well, one thing, Bob, this second time you've talked about a collaborative program. I have Mark Van Stone talking in December. Otherwise, I have two people a month all the way through December, but so far only Mark Van Stone in December. If we pushed him, he hasn't chosen a date. So if we pushed him to the first week in December, would you all, who would it be? Carl, Michael, and Barb? Would you all want to take maybe the second week in December so we're not bothering anybody's holiday, but yet it would be the last big bang of the year for the Aztlander?
Well, I might be gone, so I can't quite do that. But I think it's imperative that Barb alone, if she can, give a presentation on the 311 peak. We'll collaborate prior to, and I'll show her all the deep time jumps that have the multiples of 33 and 66 Bak'tuns and things of this nature. But I think Barb should have the stage there to really explain the fundamentals of this almanac that she reconstructed. It's a brilliant piece of work.
well, my thought would be to push it into next year, early next year.
Oh, because you have your operation. Yes, Barb.
No, that's not really relevant. I mean, assuming it happens because the insurance company and the hospital are basically, giving each other the cold shoulder. It's supposed to happen in early October. I mean, but it's kind of a disruptive time, even the second week of December,
Yeah,
that's when
yeah.
a
Everybody.
lot of professors are mired in end of semester work, and then they're getting ready to go somewhere on holiday. And Michael really should be a participant as well. And I mean, even Matt Looper, if he wanted to be.
Oh,
And I could carry it alone. There's no question. I've got certainly plenty of material, but I would like to think we could push it into January or early 2026. And
all right. I do have you down for September 21st next year, but
what am I talking about in September?
I don't think you chose you just said remind me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we could wait till then, or we could do it.
That long. I mean, I do have next year. I was thinking about one program a month, so I have people set up through August and September, but I would gladly have, two programs a month in like maybe February or
Okay. I mean, I could do that. I could do that.
okay.
If
Well, I tell you what, we'll definitely schedule that. I wanted to ask if there's anybody else that had any other comments or questions that might that you wanted answers or speculations. Now's your time to
Well,
add more bits for the mill.
James Bacon is probably
Mhm.
wants to get to sleep. He's in the UK right now. He
Mhm.
mentioned he's never seen mass delivered with such energy.
Oh, thank you.
Then he asks, who is the audience? Is this kind of math limited to scribes, or did Maya people seeing the stelas and other inscriptions in public spaces actively engage with and understand this math on the fly?
That's a great question. So, I think that every merchant, anybody who was a merchant and was calculating cacao beans, and especially cacao beans, because we know in the post-classic they're using that for currency, and cacao is really the rich food stuff, and you counted it out bean per bean, and we have David Stewart has shown in relation to his cacao publications that they're counting out bags of 8,000 beans or more. So I think every merchant, had this had the basic mathematical tools to count pretty large sums. And the evidence for that is that it survived into the post-conquest period because Beltran's dictionary comes from northern Yucatan in and around Uxmal, right, is his informants, and his informants are counting massive sums. So I would really encourage you, if you want to know about the basics of counting and terms for multiplication and addition, that you invest time into Beltran's dictionary, because it's a marvelous piece of nomenclature of mathematics. So, and that's just coming from everyday informants, right? But I think you had several levels of scribes. Some were copyists, some were mathematicians, some were astronomers. More importantly, you had your diviners and those who were doing horoscopes. And Floyd Lounsbury wrote a paper for the Mesa Redondas on the deep time jumps and distance numbers on the Temple of the Inscriptions at Palenque. And in that, he shows without a doubt that these deep time jumps are not random, that they are contrived counts, okay? And what he meant by contrived counts is that they were embedded with sacred multiples of planets and of cycles. And this is the hidden math, okay? This is the hidden math that's embedded into these deep time jumps. If memory serves me correct, it's either Pakal's birth or his accession date. It goes from Adahau to Adahau to a square-nosed beastie god in the deep primordial time. But that jump between those two Adahau dates, right, is embedded with sacred multiples. That is the hidden math that nobody sees, nobody is meant to see, but that is the hidden math that is that proves the divine connection between that deep time ancestor and Pakal. And it says the mathematics are proving that they are both made of the same divine stuff. Okay, and nobody since Lounsbury has talked about how counting is divination, right? And it's related to numerology and horoscopes. That is primary, because he says that the king is going to get his calendar priests and and he's going to find out the best day to do that accession, the best day to do that ball game, right? And a tremendous amount of thought and calculus are going to go into that, choosing that day and referencing it into deep time and into historical time. That's what takes prominence over history. So we treat Maya inscriptions too much that they're history, but they're divinations first with hidden mathematics. So to answer his question, just as today that we have mathematicians, math teachers, and we have physicists who use, very erudite and special mathematics. I think you had all levels of mathematics. You had mathematics of the marketplace, mathematics of counting. My God, I mean, human. The name for person is Winique, and the Winique means 20 because a person has 10 fingers and 10 toes. So when we had that divine birth of the number 20, right? Literally, this is the birth of human consciousness and the ability to count. That has to happen before the creation of the world, before the rising of the first planets and the counting of the first suns. Has to be the birth of human consciousness, the he of 20, which is human consciousness itself. So I mean, it's really, really deep stuff. So I think it's embedded in religion. It's embedded in divinations every day. It's embedded in the math, the market of the math of the market. But the really, really high level, deep time stuff, these are for calendar specialists, because those deep time jumps are going to be embedded with not only sacred multiples of calendars, they're going to be embedded with multiples relating to planetary cycles. And this is what I can show on Palenque House E. So more to come. More to come. It's a beautiful set of calculations, but they're 5 pages long. It's a heck of a proof. But it's an incredibly thorough one at that.
I see Sim is unmuted. So Sim, would you like to make a few comments? He thinks you really cracked this, Carl. Sim.
Yes, sorry, yes, I was looking for the mute and unmute
Hi,
button.
Sam.
I just had one question which is not quite related to
Sure.
Carl's topic. The hieroglyphic stairway, the Yaxchilan hieroglyphic stairway 2.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I noticed that a lot of the faces actually been got rid of. So I was wondering whether it had been ritually destroyed, because if you look, all the glyphs are actually still fine, and all the dresses and the iconography is even quite good. But the face of the falling victim is gone. The face of the king that's dancing is gone. And if you go on to the next one,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. I think you're absolutely right. This happens again and again through sites where especially the faces are attacked. Okay, so if you've got an invading force and the city is overwhelmed, the very first thing that they start chopping is the faces. And I think because we know that this ball court captive is a historical personage, they give the toponym of the place there. Yeah, so that's exactly what's happening. Also, what I find fascinating is that at Copan has certain stela where the very key, and I don't know if this is part of a termination ritual or happenstance or if it's intention, but the very key component to the key that you need to crack the deep that part of the deep time chronology is chipped off. Even when it's just everything else is in place, and that key, it's chipped off. It's like when Cocteau, when he finally was now king and reigning and potentially reigning over Copan, he appropriated iconography, he appropriated mathematics, he appropriated sacred place names. He took the Copan Palenque. I mean, he's just Matt goes into great detail on how much he's appropriating. I think he appropriated Copan scribes, and when he left Copan, he destroyed monuments, and then took monuments with like and kind calculations, which he later would take credit for. And then we've got some ego involved here because he's doing it bigger. The monument, everything's big. Everything's bigger. It's taller. It's more time investment. And he said, I'm going to count bigger than anybody's ever counted bigger ever. And that's what's going on here too. There's big ego involved, right? He's on top of the world, and he's showing it because he's amassed all of these scribes, all of this workforce to construct some of the tallest and largest monuments in all of Mayan history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one closing comment then from me is, Carl, I think at the very beginning of your talk, when you showed that it didn't work with pretending that it was just the old-fashioned way of doing things,
Yeah.
and it didn't come out to the right calendar round, and then you did your thing where you said if you interpret it as the repeating factor,
Yeah.
and it does, that should be the sort of bait that you can offer to anyone. I'm saying that that's the best way to present it. This is wrong, but if you do it my way, it's suddenly right. And then that's just should be the opening. And I think that people should be lining up to publish your paper. That's all I want to say.
This is what I'm doing because one, this is why I like the Met Museum cosmic plate, because the elegance and the simplicity of the solution using deep time, the deep time jumps. Okay, but this is my first volley. I'm saying all I'm saying is here are mathematically precise solutions to which agree with all of the components stated, this is a solution. And my challenge to everyone who's listening and everybody who thinks this is a bunch of bull is, okay, if you don't think this is right, then show me a set of calculations that work. And if you disprove me, you've advanced the field. I'm totally happy with that. If you've disproved, being that no one has ever offered any solutions, these are the solutions.
No, nothing.
Disprove those solutions with better math. You win the argument. You advance the field. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that conclusion. But right now, these calculations stand because they're the only calculations that reach the given target dates and incorporate all the variables.
Absolutely.
There you go. Okay, thanks, Sim. I know we're running a little bit long here, so is there any other questions that I can address?
Nothing in particular that I see in the chat.
Okay, well, I know that everyone's got to go eat and sleep. That's really important. But I just want to say thank you so much for your time and attention. It's been an absolute joy to share these new insights and this new calculus of deep time. And what we're quickly developing here is the mathematics, a whole new branch of Maya mathematics that deal with deep time. And again, I struggle with giving names to new types of notations and new types of base formula. I'm literally inventing this terminology and applying it as we progress forward. So I would love any conversations I can have with epigraphers, especially mathematicians. We can debate whether do we apply the term sigma notation, do we apply a bar notation? How can we formulate equivalent terms in our modern world to these concepts that are being offered by the Maya? That's equally important.
All right, thank you, Carl.
Hey, well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Barb. Thank you, Zim. Thank you, everybody who offered questions. And this is just the beginning. I've taken this and I've run with it, and I've applied these deep time cumulative counts to other counts, and I keep cracking. I keep cracking open the possibilities and even more solutions that I hope to share with you in the future. Terribly exciting, and I hope you can be along for the ride.
All righty, and thanks for putting together such a nice, colorful, presentation.
I'm glad it just came. And then, of course, we have this Easter egg this Easter egg of the cosmic plate. I mean, one of the most famous, beautiful pieces of Maya mythic iconography, and now we can offer a solution. And I couldn't have done that, Jim, if you didn't demand that I give you a presentation. So you deserve full credit in conjunction with this discovery, because this was a last-minute addition, and then suddenly I said, oh my God, this is just more parallel dates that are equating to potential deep time jumps, and it just went click, 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 just like that.
Well, deer is reed spelled backwards, so that's one of my power objects.
Okay.
All
right. Good night, everybody, and thanks again. And I hope that we all pray to the proper Maya gods of computing and mathematics to keep the ball rolling here.
Great.
I would love to talk about the patron gods of mathematics. That's another topic I'll try to weave in on the next lecture, especially the god of zero.
All right. Sounds good to me.
Okay, bye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Right. Take care and stay crazy. Stay crazy. It's the only way to keep sane.
That's certainly true in these times.
That's it. That's it. Stay crazy, everybody.
Thanks again, Carl. And thank you for watching this Aztlander presentation. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To subscribe to free monthly issues of the Aztlander, Magazine of the Americas, contact your host, Jim Reed, at jimreedmaya@gmail.com. Thanks again.